No matter the sport, drafting players is such a gamble that requires a ton of time scouting the players, interviewing the players, and even luck comes into play, especially in the NFL. During this process, teams try to figure out how the players play, what their strengths and weaknesses are, how they fit into certain schemes, whether or not they are mentally ready for the next step, and what current or former player they remind you of. This brings us to the topic of today's video, where we will be going back in time and taking a look at some prospects who were given comparisons to average players at best, and have gone on to become much better players than they were ever compared to. Before we get started though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first player that has made his draft day comparison look foolish is Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott. Dak was compared to Brett Hundley coming out of Mississippi State, and Hundley has a career touchdown to interception ratio of 9-13, a passer rating of just 67.7, and a career record as a starter as 3-6. Hundley has only played in 16 career games, which equates to a full season. And for comparison, Dak in his rookie year went 13-3 as the starter, won the Rookie of the Year award, had a passer rating of over 104, and had a 23-4 touchdown to interception ratio. Fast forward nearly 3 full seasons later, and Dak has compiled a career record of 39-23 and has a career touchdown to interception ratio of 93-36. Dak has more than outplayed his draft day comparison, to say the least. The next player that has made their draft day comparison look foolish is Vikings wide receiver Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs has become one of the more electric receivers in the NFL over the past few years. He currently leads the NFL with receptions over 30 yards this season with 13, and has 5 games of over 100 yards receiving in 2019 as well. His draft day comparison was Harry Douglas, who was at best the third option for the Falcons in the early 2010s. Douglas was always the slot receiver behind Julio and Roddy White, and while Douglas was by no means a bad player as he had over 300 career catches, he just is when comparing him to Stefon Diggs. Douglas had just 10 career touchdowns over the course of 9 seasons and 118 career games, while Diggs had a career high of 9 touchdowns in 2018 alone. Diggs is only 26 years old, and with no signs of slowing down, already has more catches, receiving yards, and touchdowns than Douglas had in his entire career. The next player that has made their draft day comparison look foolish is Bucs wide receiver Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin has really come into his own as a receiver in 2019, as he has over 1,300 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns on the year. He has 6 100 receiving yard games, which is twice the amount that the player he was compared to on draft day has in his entire career. Chris Godwin, when he came out of Penn State, was compared to Jermaine Kearse, and to say Chris has already outperformed those expectations is an understatement. Kearse has 0 games in his career at or above 10 receptions, while Godwin has 2 this season alone. While Kearse may be remembered more for his touchdown that sent the Seahawks to the Super Bowl back in 2014, Godwin as a player is already better than he ever was, and the numbers only back that up through 3 years of his career. Chris is still just 23 years old and has the next decade to improve as a wideout. The next player that has made their draft day comparison look foolish is Browns running back Kareem Hunt. Looking at Kareem Hunt, the football player, in his 27 games in Kansas City, he rushed for over 2,100 yards and 15 touchdowns, which is good to begin with. However, Kareem added another 79 receptions, 800 receiving yards, and 10 receiving touchdowns during this time span as well. With this type of production right out of Toledo, he had to be compared to somebody good, or at least one would think. Instead, Kareem was compared to, and I had to look this guy up because I admittedly did not know who he was, but he was compared to former Broncos running back Olandis Gary. Gary played in the NFL for just 4 years in the early 2000s and rushed for less than 2,000 yards during his time. Kareem in 2 seasons alone more than made his comparison look foolish, and at just 24 years old, looks like he can still do this for the next couple of years. This was a bad draft day comparison from the start, and Hunt has made this look more than foolish. The next player who made their draft day comparison look bad is 49ers tight end George Kittle. George Kittle sprung onto the scene in 2018 in a way we hadn't seen a tight end get so good so fast since Gronk in the early part of the decade. That's no disrespect to Zach Ertz or Travis Kelce. It's just their build-up to where they are now was more gradual than Kittle's was. Anyway, George Kittle's comparison back in the 2017 draft was to Charles Clay, who is absolutely nowhere near the player Kittel is now. Clay is just one career season above 700 receiving yards, and Kittel, who is only 26, already has 2, and hopefully has many more in the tank in the next few years. Tight ends in 2019 are just big receivers, and Kittel has already, in just his 3rd season, significantly outperformed his pre-draft comparison. Kittel already has 8 career 100-yard games to Clay's 4, and as a former 5th-round pick, he has exceeded the pre-draft expectations that were placed on him. The final player that has outperformed his pre-draft comparison is Saints receiver Michael Thomas. Can't guard Mike was compared to, and this is laughable, but former NFL receiver Charles Johnson. Charles played for the Vikings in 2014 and was a 7th-round pick in 2013 by the Packers, and his career stats were 60 catches for 834 yards and 2 touchdowns. Michael's so far through nearly 4 years of his career are 454 catches, which is the most ever through 4 years of a player's career, including back-to-back 125-catch seasons, over 5,000 yards, and over 30 touchdowns. There cannot be enough good things said about Mike, and he is the best receiver in football, and the numbers only back it up. Mike, in his last 30 games, has 258 catches on nearly 3,000 yards and 17 touchdowns. He truly has become uncoverable, and is more than likely on his way to Canton when he hangs his cleats up. Anyway, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Again, thank you for watching, and have a great day. Skol Vikes.